Sirens. Sirens always creep me out. Whether it would be an air raid siren, like the ones you hear from a horror movie like Silent Hill, or the screeching of a fire siren that can be heard in your small local towns around PA. I can never really explain why, they just always creep me out. Maybe it was what they represented, or simply the sound they made and how they were so sudden and jarring. Ever since my family and I moved out into the country in our nice house with hundreds of acres of land, we were far enough away from the town to not have to be jarred awake every time a poor family was dealing with a fire somewhere in the county. Now, with that being said, on a fine summer evening, as I lounged in my bedroom playing video games on a Saturday night, like a typical teenager would be doing, I was pulled from my immersion with the sound of my mother calling my name. But she wasn't calling my name in her usual tone of voice like I needed to come wash the dinner plate or take the trash out to the curb on a garbage night. She was calling my name in a tone of voice that almost seemed panicked or confused. So I paused my game and came downstairs, stretching out my arms and letting out a yawn after sitting in one spot for a few hours. That's typically what you have to do. "Yeah, Ma," I said grudgingly, but no response. I scanned my eyes across the living room, but it was empty. I walked into the kitchen. "Mom, what did you want?" Still no response. I groaned and walked to the front door. As I noticed it was open, I could hear multiple voices having a muffled conversation. I walked up to the screen door and saw my mother talking to my dad and one of our neighbors. The bit of the conversation I picked up was,
"Military checkpoints being set up in town. They're urging everyone to head home and stay indoors."
I then chimed in with, "Mom? Dad? What's wrong? What did you need, Mom? Why did you call me?" Mom was biting her nails while standing anxiously, asking questions to our neighbor. Dad walked up to the screen door, opened it, and beckoned me outside.
"Charles, something strange is going on and the army is in town. Stay inside. Do not ride your bike into town. Do you understand me?"
I raised an eyebrow in a very curious manner. "The army? Why are they here? Are terrorists coming to get us or something?" I wasn't really scared at the time. All the video games I played at that age probably desensitized me to the fact that military presence actually meant something serious.
"I know just about as much as you do, bud. But I know one thing. Your ass is grass if you leave this house. Do you understand me?"
"Yeah, Dad," I groaned. Our neighbor then chimed in.
"This might have something to do with those strange electrical storms I seen while driving past those cornfields a few miles out past town. The sky looked like an unnatural red color, with clouds that looked like they were swirling like a tornado was about to touch down, but the strangest thing is, they got tanks down there and everything. What the hell would they need tanks for in case of a tornado?"
The worst part about all of this is the more they talked about it, the more I wanted to sneak out tonight and take a nice nighttime bike ride down into town and see what was going down. That is, if my dad didn't put the fear of God into me. I know I'd be a dead man if I got caught, so I shut that idea in my head down fairly quickly. "Alright, I'm going back upstairs, everyone," as I trotted back into the house to continue my gaming session. Before I knew it, 9 p.m. turned into 12 a.m. That strange phenomenon all gamers experience when they lose themselves in a good video game. My eyelids were getting heavy, so I passed out with my game paused and my window open to let that cool breeze tickle my cheek while I snored, until the sound of thunder shook me awake. We've all been there when that rainstorm creeps up on you in the middle of the night and wakes you up with that loud crack in the sky. I looked over at my alarm clock. 3 a.m. Groggily, I stood up, rubbing the sleep from my eyes. All that soda I drank got to me as I rushed to the bathroom to relieve myself. And as I walked back in the bedroom to shut my window, I noticed something standing in the yard. I squinted, as it all looked like a blur to me. So I grabbed my glasses, shuffling around my bedside table, and now I could see clearly. I turned to look out the window again. It's a woman. A very attractive blonde woman. But she's slightly closer to the house now, facing me, The strange thing was, something really seemed quite off about her. She had a flirtatious look on her face. She was staring at me. She looked like a princess. And this is hard to put into words, but she had a red mist around her feet, almost like fog. As she took very coy steps towards the house, I noticed something else. The grass she walked over seemed to look wilted and dead, almost as if she was sucking the life out of the ground when she walked. I felt anxious, but oddly compelled to not look away. Then suddenly she stopped, and staring into my eyes again, that flirtatious look on her face. I felt like I was in a trance-like state, almost as if I was daydreaming, but I literally couldn't look away from her. She was beautiful. I heard her faintly start humming. I had a vision at this moment. The beautiful woman took me to my paradise. A dream come true. Everything I had ever wanted was there. My body felt numb. I needed to go to her. That's all I knew. In the back of my head, I heard a voice calling me, telling me to come outside to her. Suddenly, I hear my mother calling my name.
Charles! Charles, wake up! Come downstairs, hurry!
I was ripped out of my hallucination and looked away from the woman in the yard towards my open bedroom door. I hesitated, looking back at the window of my door aside, and ran downstairs quickly and came outside onto the deck where my mom and dad were standing, pointing towards the town. I could hear it now. The sirens. And above the town, a crimson swirling cloud with red tinted lightning, almost like a tornado, but instead of touching down, it had a gaping hole in the middle. Something I have never seen before. And then I remembered the woman in the backyard. I tried to explain to my parents, but they wouldn't listen, and they said we needed to leave now. I quickly and anxiously rushed to get my shoes on, with no socks and in my pajamas. I rushed out the back door to the car, and I seen my neighbor, blankly staring into the yard with no sense of urgency upon his face. And the same woman I seen that was singing to me from my bedroom window, she was gazing at him. He looked like a zombie. He shambled towards her, her humming sounding loud and innocent. He got close and her expression changed. She no longer looked innocent and flirtatious. She had malice on her face. Her eyes were black as the night sky, and her teeth, they were jagged and gnarly looking. And as he got close enough to drop on his knees in front of her, she grinned. Her nails were also sharp as she gingerly placed her hand on the back of his head and slit his throat. His body convulsing but not making a single sound. And then she pulled him up to her face and began drinking the fluid pouring from his neck, and his skin turned pale as snow. He looked drained of life in a matter of seconds. His body withered up like one of those frozen corpses you'd find in the Arctic mountains of the Himalayas. I gasped. I began to feel that dropping feeling in my stomach. The distant sound of sirens and faint gunshots ring out in the distance as my dad grabs my shoulder and dragged me to the car. He threw me in the back seat, and then he started the car with urgency and quickly shifted into drive, and as we pulled out of the driveway, I seen the woman staring back at me, smiling. As my skin crawled, I shuddered and turned away. And as our house faded away in the distance, my father lets out loud cuss words and mentions how we have to drive through town to get out of the county. My mother sobs in the passenger seat, and I slouch back. My mind is working at 1,000 miles per hour right alongside my heart. The sky around us now is completely red, almost wine red. I hear thunder as I look up at the great swirling mass above us and see the lightning strike out and hit buildings somewhat close to the car, and I swore if I squinted hard enough, I could see faint, winged silhouettes within the eye of the cloud whenever the lightning would strike, and the area would light up for just a few seconds as it touched down. My dad swerved, which brought my attention down to the streets around the vehicle. Men in military uniforms everywhere lay dead in the streets. all of them looking like our neighbor did, drained, withered, lifeless. I saw multiple women scattered across the streets with soldiers shambling towards them, all men strangely, no weapons in hand. It was a sight that I don't wish upon my greatest enemy. And as we drive down the street, I look left and right. All I can make out are tons of soldiers being killed, just like our neighbor, being held up and drained, some on their knees, some still walking to their doom. There were more of those women than I could count. Tanks were driven into the side of buildings, vehicles were flipped over, street posts were toppled. My dad floored it at this point, pushing our small car to its breaking point when we finally made it past the last building towards the cornfields. My dad lets out a sigh as he grabs my mom's hand and tells her,
"We're gonna make it. God help us, we're gonna make..."
He stops mid-sentence, and all I can remember is the car veering off the road into a ditch, and I blacked out. I slowly regain consciousness. The car is flipped. My mother and father are gone. My ankle feels broken. The only thing I could do was somehow crawl out of the broken window of the car and lay there. I hear sirens coming from the town. The cloud looks bigger. I look over to see my dad, shambling into the field. My mom was chasing after him, yelling his name, and a tear rolls down my cheek. And suddenly a winged figure drops down behind my mother, grasping her and lifting her off the ground as if she was a child, and it flew off with her. My father disappeared into the cornfield. I rolled onto my back and looked up into the sky at the swirling cloud engulfing the stars, and as I hear a familiar humming, the beautiful woman smiles as she stands over me. My paradise is waiting.